I am Pam Marsh, your moderator from New Haven. I was trying to think. I think I've been the moderator since 2004. I mean, 1984. It's been a while. A couple of preliminary things before I begin with the reading of the warning. First, I'd like the board members to introduce themselves. I'm going to start on my right with Sandy Lee.
So I'm Sandy Lee from the town of Lincoln.
Barry Olson from town of Lincoln.
Carol Eldridge, Bristol.
Chris Pearsall, Bristol. Shauna Sherwin, Moncton.
Dawn Griswold, Moncton.
Benita Bedard, Starksboro.
Jody Bashad, Starksboro.
Doug DeWitt, representing Bristol.
Bob Donis, Bristol.
And let's just introduce the school administrators that are here. We have David Adams, the superintendent. Just wave your hand.
Hello.
Howard Mansfield, our chief financial officer. Karen Wheeler, who takes our minutes and saves our butts. And our principal. Ganella Lyon. So welcome to everybody. And as a housekeeping matter, I believe there may be 3 people, if there's any more here that might like to speak that are not members of the 5-town district, but I know of Howard Mansfield, the CFO, and David Adams, our soup, and with Kathy Alexander, the food service director, are not members of the supervisory union. Could I have a motion to allow them to speak as needed for this meeting?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And who's second in the back there? Amy Moody, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. So, let us begin with the reading of the warning and Article 1. The voters of Union High School District Number 28 are hereby warned and notified to meet at Mount Abraham Union High School in Bristol, Vermont on Tuesday, February 24th, 2015 at 7 p.m. to discuss and transact the following business. Article 5 requires a vote by Australian ballot to take place on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015 at the annual polling places of the respective towns at hours conforming to those of each town. So, please find a seat. Article 1 is to receive and act upon the reports of the Union High School District officers. So I understand we have a few special reports to begin with. Dawn, do you want to explain the special reports?
Sure. Here at Mount Abraham, we take great pride in our students' voice. So at this meeting this year, we decided to incorporate some student voice. The first thing that we have is some of our Iron Chef competitors and Kathy Alexander. If I could give them a few minutes to just explain. You can pick up the microphone if you need to.
I'm good. Hi, everybody. This is Junior Art Chef for 2015, and basically what we do is we cook food. We are the Mount Abians. We have Sarah, Peter, and me, Christian. Our coach is Kathy.
We come once a week after school and practice our dish for the competition in March. Some things we have cooked in the past are a vegetable frittata, beet burgers, kale, salad, and pizza. We learned knife skills, mise en place, sautéing, and other cooking skills.
Okay, so we're going to be sharing a dish with you tonight. Basically, it's a ricotta gnocchi in a kale spinach cup with a butternut basil sauce with a hint of cinnamon. And not to mention the cups are kind of lemony. There's also a little bit of tomato around the edge of some of the plates. And then I'd like to welcome you guys to come cheer us on March 21st at the Champlain Valley Expo in Essex. That's where the competition takes place.
What time is your competition?
I think we're in the morning. It's probably 9 to noon. There's 2 heats. I think Thank you. There's more information right here if you want to learn more about Junior Iron Chef, and help yourself to our samples of our treat or dish.
I'll declare a 5-minute recess for the purpose of sampling, and then we'll resume the meeting.
Get it while it's hot.
Come on up, folks, and give us a try. You're not all the product.
Oh, that's so cute. Potato gnocchi. Do you ever watch All Out? What is that? It's like a potato. It's not called You're like having the mac and cheese out of it. Brad, aren't you going to get some food?
But if we could have the conversation level go down a little bit, the next report. Can people hear me? No. All right. All right, I will use this microphone. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, call the meeting back to order. The next report, special report that we are going to receive tonight is from our principal, Gaynell Lyman, who's going to present the Vermont School Board Association situational analysis, which is a short PowerPoint that she's going to explain. Okay? Is there anybody who can dim lights here? Thank you.
In Vermont, all eyes are focused on our public education system. 3 areas in particular are generating significant interest. They are increasing cost per student, rising property taxes, and persistent inequities in educational opportunities and outcomes among our students. This presentation brings into focus some relevant data with respect to these issues. We leave conclusions to the viewer with respect to the best ways to address concerns about fiscal sustainability and student achievement. But in the interest of informing the conversation, we carefully gathered and vetted the data in order to provide state and local policymakers with an accurate situational analysis of public education in the state of Vermont in 2014. Let's begin with the first pressing issue, rising per pupil costs. In Vermont, our current expenditure per full-time equivalent student has more than doubled in the last 14 years. Part of this increase was due to more resources flowing into the system as a result of Act 60 and Act 68. But another significant driver of these dramatically rising per pupil costs is our declining student population. Vermont's school system has been steadily declining in population since the late 1990s. Looking at average daily membership totals, or ADM, of K through 12 students between FY 1997 and FY 2014, we see that after peaking at 103,000 students 17 years ago, the latest figures indicate Vermont public schools enroll about 82,000 students. Average daily membership is the full-time equivalent of publicly funded students during a specific census period. ADM includes students tuition to approved independent schools and out-of-state schools. This downward trend for our student population is expected to continue. Projections for FY 2014 through FY 2017 show a 2% decrease in K-12 average daily membership. Frequently in this presentation, we will be comparing Vermont to our New England neighbors and the nation as a whole. This comparison chart shows current expenditures per enrolled pupil in FY 2000 and FY 2010, the most recent year for which accurate data are available. Current expenditure includes most school spending. It excludes expenditures that are not necessarily future obligations of districts, primarily building construction costs and payments to out-of-state institutions for special needs students. In the 1999-2000 school year, Vermont's current expenditure per enrolled student was third highest in New England and 27% greater than the national average. In the 2009-2010 school year, Vermont had the highest expenditure per pupil in New England and spent 48% more than the national average. The only other states that spent more per student in FY 2010 were New York, New Jersey, and Alaska. In the 11-year period depicted in this chart, Vermont's annual per student spending increase averaged 8.4%. This figure is a reflection both of actual dollar increases and decreasing student population. Education is a labor-intensive endeavor. 80% of Vermont's current expenditures are attributable to the salaries and benefits of school employees. Yet despite our declining student population, between FY 2004 and FY 2014, the number of working teachers and paraeducators in Vermont held relatively steady, measured in full-time equivalent positions, or FTEs. At 9.9 students per every teacher, Vermont has the lowest student-teacher ratio in the country. Our ratio has been declining over the past several years from 10.92 students per teacher in FY11 to 9.9 students per teacher in FY 2014. This suggests that statewide, Vermont school districts have not made progress right-sizing their staff in response to continuing declines in student enrollment. While we employ a relatively large number of teaching professionals, we do not pay them relatively well. Vermont's average teacher salaries are lower than in any New England state except Maine. They are also less than the national average. Vermont school districts offer generous health benefit packages to their employees. According to a recent analysis by VHI, school districts currently offer health plans that are more generous than any offered on Vermont Health Connect, the state's health insurance exchange. On the left side of this chart are the basic health insurance plans offered through Vermont Health Connect. Plans are designated as platinum, gold, silver, or bronze. The difference in metal levels is due to cost share, not differences in coverage. On the right side of the chart are VHI's most popular health plans. The VHI and VHC plan designs are very similar. That is, they cover the same services. However, VHI plans create significantly less out-of-pocket cost obligations for employees than most VHC plans. In the most popular VHI plans, 95% of healthcare costs are covered by the premium, making those plans Platinum Plus. Compare that to the Silver plan, where the premium covers 70% of the costs. Most Vermonters enrolled in Vermont Health Connect have a Silver plan. These generous health benefits are expensive. In FY 2014, VHI's most popular single plan cost $7,665. The cost of a family plan was over $20,000. School districts pay, on average, 86% of the premium cost. With 95% of healthcare costs covered by the premium and more than 85% of the cost of the premium paid by the employer, school district employees are very insulated from out-of-pocket healthcare costs. School districts are serving an increasingly complex student population. This slide examines the percent of Vermont students who have enrolled in free or reduced price lunch, abbreviated as the FRL population. This is an important measure of family income because it does not consider a state or a city as a whole. It measures only those families who have students actively enrolled in public school. There are very strong and enduring correlations between a student's socioeconomic status and his or her educational achievement. We will examine some of those figures later in the presentation. These data show that the FRL population in Vermont has increased significantly during the last 10 years, from 26% to greater than 40%. Some of the increase can be attributed to changes to the eligibility formula that made more families eligible for the program, as well as increased outreach by school districts to enroll students in the program. This slide looks at special education costs as a percentage of total expenditures over a 10-year period. In 2004, special education costs were 20% of total expenditures. By 2013, they constituted roughly 23%. This slide examines some additional cost drivers in education. New laws are passed every year that, while generally well-intentioned, have the consequence of incurring costs and utilizing resources at the district level. This list of recent actions is only a sampling of new requirements and does not consider the impact of federal school legislation, which similarly can impose upward pressure on costs. Given the expanded services that school districts are being asked to provide, both to students and their families, the size and scale of our small districts has been identified as yet another factor driving increasing costs per student. This chart shows the distribution of pupils by school district size. In all other New England states, less than 10% of the student population is served by school districts with fewer than 500 pupils. In Vermont, 35% of our students are served by these very small districts. In Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, half the students are served by districts with more than 5,000 pupils. Vermont has no such districts. Even our rural sister states, Maine and New Hampshire, are organized very differently. 80% of their students are served by districts with at least 1,000 pupils. In Vermont, just 30% of our students are served by 1,000+ districts. The column to the far right compares Vermont supervisory unions with New England school districts. 72% of Vermont students belong to an SU with between 1,000 and 3,000 students. Only 2% of our SUs are smaller than 500 students. And at the other end of the spectrum, our two largest SUs have about 4,000 students each. Now let's turn to an analysis of Vermont's increasing property tax rates. An outside education funding expert whom the legislature hired to examine Vermont's education finance system found that Vermonters' education tax effort is the highest in the nation. Due primarily to increased education spending per pupil and reduced property wealth, Vermont's base education tax rates have been increasing over the past 5 years. This trend is expected to continue for the next several years. One other factor contributing to increasing property tax rates is a decrease in the overall proportion of education costs being paid by general fund revenues and other dedicated taxes. These other revenues are primarily income taxes that support the general fund and 1/3 of Vermont's sales tax. In 2005, revenue from these sources accounted for 39% of total education funding. By FY 2015, that share had dropped to 32%. Beginning in fiscal year 2012, at the recommendation of Governor Shumlin, the legislature reduced the annual general fund contribution to the education fund by $23 million. That same year, it shifted the cost of Vermont's Corrections High School from the general fund to the education fund at an annual cost of greater than $4 million. 1 cent on the property tax rate raises roughly $11 million. So if the governor and legislature had not taken these steps, property tax rates would be approximately 2.5 cents less in each year since. What about Vermonters' ability to afford these rising taxes? This comparison chart shows that Vermont's median household income is a few $1,000s above the national average and a few $1,000s less than the New England average. New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Massachusetts residents have significantly more income per family than Vermonters. Vermont's current education expenditure as a percent of personal income is the highest in New England. This figure reflects our relatively high spending levels and our average income in comparison to the other states. Both the governor and the democratically controlled legislature have sought to restrain school spending. This year, at the recommendation of the Shumlin administration, the legislature anchored the excess spending threshold at FY 2014 spending levels and will inflate it annually using the New England Economic Project Index for local government goods and services. Many observers consider this threshold to be the most effective budget control mechanism in the existing school funding formula. The legislature also strongly considered an array of other adjustments to Vermont's education funding formula, including the elimination of the small schools grant, all designed to more clearly connect actual school spending with tax levels paid by local communities. This graph looks at the effect of the excess spending threshold changes had the new threshold been in place over the past 5 years. Under current law, the threshold is set at 123% of the previous year's statewide education spending per equalized pupil. Any amount a district spends per pupil over that threshold is double taxed. That is, it is counted twice in determining the homestead and income tax rates. In this chart, the blue line is actual statewide education spending per equalized pupil between FY 2011 and FY 2015. The red line is education spending per equalized pupil inflated by the NEEP Government Goods and Services Index. During this time period, the average annual rate of increase was 3.55%. That's the blue line. Whereas the average annual rate of increase under the NEEP index was 2.14%. The changes made this year will almost certainly result in a lower threshold. As districts continue to struggle with personnel costs and declining enrollments, the excess spending penalty will hit more and more districts, increasing tax rates in those towns. Vermont has a strong commitment to educational equity. Yet despite this commitment and significant resources devoted to education, we continue to see persistent inequities in educational opportunities and outcomes. In the final section of this presentation, we will look at some measures of educational outcomes among Vermont students. One area where Vermont excels is in graduating our students after 4 years of high school. Recent figures indicate that 92% of students graduate in 4 years, the best in the country. But despite this success, students eligible for free or reduced lunch are significantly less likely to graduate on time with their peers. The National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP, is the only educational assessment currently administered nationwide. The NAEP is administered in grades 4, 8, and 12 and is used to compare student performance across states and among subgroups. Looking at 8th grade math scores between the years 2000 and 2013, we can see that while a significant gap exists between students eligible for free or reduced lunch and those who are not, nationwide the gap between the two groups appears to be narrowing. Vermont students have historically performed at the top of the nation on the NAEP. However, we do not seem to be making gains in narrowing the gap in performance between low-income students and their wealthier peers. Since 2007, the gap between the two subgroups appears to be widening, an unsettling trend in a state as committed to equity as Vermont is. Inequities persist when we look at post-secondary enrollment rates. According to a recent study by VSAC, just 42% of male high school graduates whose parents did not go to college enrolled in some form of post-secondary institution, compared to 77% of female students whose parents went to college. These inequities affect all of us. The rising earnings disparities between those with and those without a college degree means that an individual with just a high school diploma will earn, on average, 64% less on an annual basis than someone with a bachelor's degree. In Vermont, we face a significant leadership challenge. We spend more per student than almost any other state in the nation. Our property tax rates are increasing at an unsustainable pace. Perhaps most importantly, we know our systems are not designed to engage all learners, and as a result, we continue to see persistent inequities in student opportunities and outcomes. We know we need to address these challenges without the benefit of additional resources. We also know we cannot wait to act. This task is not an easy one, but for Vermont's children, our future, we cannot be satisfied until we have a sustainable and equitable system of public education. This concludes the presentation. Throughout, we've sought to bring you information relevant to your work as superintendents and school board leaders. We recognize that your consideration of the content may lead to additional questions. Our associations look forward to supporting your work as you strive to create high-quality educational opportunities for students in the most cost-effective manner possible. Thank you.
Okay, can we have the lights back on?
Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is Bob Donis, who's going to speak about the ENDS policy.
Madam Moderator?
Yes.
Can we refer to the warrant agenda and then perhaps have these special reports under Article 7?
So we have a request to deal with these special reports under Article 7 rather than in connection with Article 1. Is that seconded? I'm not hearing a second. Okay. Is there any discussion? Yes?
There are more student presentations, and I gave them a time frame so that they could schedule when they wouldn't be here waiting till all the questions got done. So there are some more student presentations for the.
On the agenda, and
it's
some of us have put in a full day of work, and most of you probably have as well. And I don't know how late the public discussion will go. And we waited. That video was half an hour. It's now 35 minutes after the official start time.
Some of the items go quickly, but there's been a motion, it's been seconded, there's discussion. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Okay.
I would just, if I could speak real quick, just to piggyback on that, I have students that are here and waiting. I've worked all day too, but they are also here because they were requested to be here, and I would like them to be able to do their piece tonight.
Yes.
I'd like
Could
to
you
know that also. I have several students here as well.
Okay. I would ask people, when you stand, would you please identify yourselves and your town? And I know several of the people who just spoke were teachers, but okay. Are you asking to do all of these special reports under Article 1? Yes. Okay. So the board chair wishes to do all just so that you know in voting, these special reports under Article 1, which is to receive and act upon the reports of the Union High School District. Is there further discussion?
I'm not sure I understood that last statement. I guess I was just going to offer a friendly amendment that the students get to go at this time and then go back to the warned agenda. I don't know if that's friendly.
Is that in fact a friendly amendment, Ms. Stilberg?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Ms. Stilberg.
Shall I second it?
You can. If you accept it as a friendly amendment, then who is the seconder over here? Someplace. Whoever seconded yours, do you accept that as well? Okay.
Who seconded?
Right. Could you state your name?
Yes, Stephanie Adrian from Starksboro.
Okay. Thank you. So motion has been moved and seconded that we take the student presentations next in the special reports section. If there's no further discussion, yes, Benita.
I would just like to point out that these, if there was ever anything that is a report that we ought to offer here at Mount Abraham, it's what our students are doing. And I feel like this is certainly a report from Mount Abraham. And I feel like it's a critical part. So I feel like it needs to be under reports, and it's where it properly should be in the agenda.
Is there any further discussion? Oh boy, okay. Yes, sir, with the sweater.
It's important, I
Your
think,
name, please?
to know what the students are doing, but this is an informational meeting. This is a meeting to discuss the budget items in the budget. So I think maybe at another point you need to have two meetings. One meeting to show what's happening, for example, in the school, and then the other meeting to actually allow people that have a lot of questions to talk about the budget. I think the budget is distinct to this school. I mean, it was great to look at some of those figures that were 10 years old.
Okay, I need to stop you so that we can move on. We're on a very narrow procedural motion. Could you just state your name for the record, please? Sir.
Alan Quittner.
Thank you, Mr. Quittner. Is there any further discussion on this little procedural motion? Yes, Nancy?
I just wonder what the other special reports are in addition to the student presentation.
Bob Donis was going to speak about our ends policy. It's another piece of information we use to frame our decision-making around the budget, as well as the educational analysis. It's information we get, it gives us a look now at what we're looking at, a look to the future of what we're looking at. So it all informs our decision when we're considering a budget. And then the student presentations, and then there was a 5-minute update from the Facility Advisory Committee.
Okay. I'm going to rule that the Facility Advisory Committee update is going to come up in Article 7.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What about Bob? Would you like to move that to 7 as well?
We've got a motion on the floor, so we need to deal with that first before we do it with anything else. Okay, are we ready to vote on the motion, which is to take the student reports next? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, so let's take the student reports first, which is begins with sweet transitions. Would you please come forward?
I will grab them. That's right. So we had prepared 2 songs to sing for you tonight, but seeing how we're short on time, would it be more appropriate just to do 1? Do 2. Takes.
Sweet transition. Okay, I'm Rush.
All my life been running, paying the price for living. How do the young survive? We're never satisfied. Only if I can listen. When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I run to? When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I hide? When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I run to? When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I hide? When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I run to? When the lights go down in the middle of the night, where will I hide? I'm on my way, I'm on my way, I'm on my way, I'm on my way. In the middle of the night, I'll be running, 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 and I'm on my way home. I'm on my way.
Lights go down, where will I run to? Lights go down, where will I hide?
Lights go down, where will I run to? Lights go down, where will I hide? Lights go down, where will I run to? Lights go down, where will I hide? I'm on my way, I'm on the way, I'm on the way, I'm on the way. In the middle of the night, I'll be running, 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 and I'm on my way home. I'm on the way. All my life, I've been running, running, and I'm on my way. All my life, I've been running.
We can just say that. No, okay.
Na 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 you understand?
I'm Emma LaRose, and I'm a freshman.
I'm Kayla Thurber, and I'm also a freshman.
I'm Jordan DiNapoli, and I'm a senior.
I'm Mary Kate Clark. I'm a senior, and I think she asked for towns too.
Yeah.
So
Bristol, Lincoln,
Moncton.
I'm Harmony Taggart. I'm from New Haven, and I'm a junior.
I'm Autumn Bill. I'm a junior. I'm from Lincoln.
I'm Patrick Davison. I'm a sophomore from Bristol.
I'm Samuel Coons. I'm a sophomore from Moncton.
And then the Environmental Club has a presentation to make.
So I'd like to introduce our Environmental Action Group. This is our fairly regular membership here. They meet twice a week, 7:30 in the morning. And they are a student-run group. I'm just here for them to tell me what to do, so I'm just going to turn it over to them. They prepared a very inclusive presentation for you to show you some of the things that we've worked on, created actions around, and worked on education around the environmental issues of our day. So I bring you the Environmental Action Group.
And could your students please introduce themselves and their towns and years?
I'm Izzy, I'm from Moncton.
I'm Ashley, I'm from Moncton.
I'm Molly, I'm from Bristol. I'm Margaret, I'm from Moncton. I'm Eliza, I'm from Moncton.
I'm Molly, I'm from Bristol. I'm Eliza, I'm from Bristol.
And I'm Caroline Camara. I live in Starksboro and I'm a teacher here.
Can we,
So
our light person disappeared.
I don't think we need the lights on for it.
Are you okay? Seeing that? Okay. Go for it.
All right, well, this is not our whole group, but this is a good portion of us, and we are really excited to tell you about what we've been doing this past year and the years before. So I guess we'll get started. I'm going to start off by talking about composting at Mount Abraham. Ever since the beginning of last year, we have been moving toward establishing an on-site composting system at Mount Abe. This is something that we've been talking about for a really long time. And last year, I decided to start. I decided to start getting the project moving by writing grants and fundraising and getting the support of teachers and administrators at Mount Abraham for this project. We have, for a couple of years, had a system in place where a local farmer picks up the food scraps from our cafeteria and takes it back to their own garden to use. And we think that it would be really great if we could instead keep the food waste here, turn it into compost, and use it in our school garden, which uses other compost from other sources now and produces vegetables that go back to our kitchen. So this project is really moving forward, promoting sustainability at Mount Abe and closing our loop of sustainability. So here I just have 3 images that show the progress of our on-site compost system. So here's a slab that was laid down in October. The forms for the cement bins were done in November, and then later in November, I forget the date, the cement was actually poured. So it's been a very long process, and we're still working toward finishing it up. But hopefully before I graduate this June, it'll be all set to go. So that's the goal for the compost system. So this was an event, the People's Climate March in New York City was an event that our environmental club participated in. We had 10 members of our club drive down to New York City and participate in what would be the largest climate march in history. And there was about 400,000 people there. And so like people from all over were advocating for things like stopping the use of plastic and stopping fracking. And we made signs that are hung up over there. And when we marched, we held them up. And here's some pictures.
So the reason that the march took place this particular weekend was because
there was a UN climate summit that was happening at that time, where world leaders were coming together to discuss climate change and the ways to deal with it. The march was supposed to show support for climate action and show that the American people really cared about dealing with climate change. It was really amazing for our club to be a part of something that was really making a big difference in climate change. And now that we're back at school, we've done a few projects on our own, small scale, to do what we can to slow climate change. And this, being part of this march really helped excite us about dealing with the problem of climate change.
This is Joe back for 1 second. This is Al Gore. We have to take a couple pictures.
It's definitely Al Gore.
Hi, I'm Ashley again, and I'm going to talk about Trash on the Lawn Day, which is an event that we've been doing here for 6 years now. And what we do is we take all of the trash from one day at our school, and we bring it out on the lawn, and we sort it up. And we take the classroom and the cafeteria waste, and then we sort that into what was trash, recycling, and food waste. And then in all the trash, we sort it down further into what was actually trash that was in the trash, what was recycling, and what was food waste. So we get to see how our school is doing with sorting, and what our habits are like, and how it changes from year to year. And we also invite classes and advisories outside, and they get to come and look at all the stuff that we've sorted, and they get to see, how much waste we actually produce in one day, which is a lot, and what is being wrongly sorted, like things that are being put in the trash but could be recycled, that could save a lot of energy. And it's a really, really fun event. It's probably my favorite that we do. We spend the whole day outside just picking through the trash, and it's a great time.
It really is their favorite day.
So, at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, we decided to branch out to elementary schools in the 5 towns. Last year we did Bristol. It was in May. And it was really fun. The 5-6 class helped work together with us to make that happen. And it prepared them for what is going to happen when they come to Mount Abe. And so they got to see a glimpse of that before. And it also helped that Bristol Elementary School to learn about their sorting habits. And we also did it in Lincoln this October. And it was really fun. That was the 3-4 class, and they happened to be doing a unit on climate change right at that time that we did that with them. So it was really cool. They knew a lot about climate change and the laws that are being put in place and everything. So that was really cool to see that. Okay, so on December 5th of last year, 7 of our students went to UVM for the Vermont Youth Climate Summit. And that's an event organized by the Rubenstein School of Environmental and Natural Resources. This was the first annual one that they're going to do. And so we participated in workshops throughout the day that helped us learn about resources and how to consolidate and how to conserve, and be more mindful of the environment as we go throughout our daily activities, as well as a club, trying to help the community raise awareness about their green action. So there were over 150 students there from 26 high schools, which was a really great turnout for the first year. And Bernie Sanders spoke. Yeah, we have a picture of Bernie. And then there's a picture of us at our table. So one highlight of this event was there were a lot of energy workshops, specifically on electricity, that we sort of took away as a club, and we started drafting some plans on how we can improve energy use, electricity use around our school. And
and around our community, which is partly why we're talking to you today. So, good segue. Energy vampires are any electronics that continue to draw energy even when they're not in use. So some examples are refrigerators, microwaves, computers, and monitors. Any devices that don't have a definite off switch that will cut the circuit, or anything that has a light on even when it's not in use. So we were asked by Principal Lyman to take a look at the energy use around our school and see what we could do to possibly reduce some of that. So, some statistics we have. We surveyed 75 classrooms and found 925 appliances. 51% of those appliances were drawing energy. We did this very early in the morning, so a lot of rooms had not been in, no one had been into them, so this is what they were like all night. 51% of appliances were drawing electricity. 91% of the rooms had appliances drawing electricity. 54% of the 291 computers we found were on and drawing energy, and 72.6% of the 285 monitors we found were drawing energy. So what we did, we took all of our findings and came up with some challenges for the Mount Abe community and teachers. We presented at some staff meeting. Yes, we presented at the staff meeting with a few challenges for teachers. Some things we had were to reduce the electricity use by consolidating appliances. All of the toasters and microwaves and refrigerators in the teacher's room are available for use, so we suggested a few less of those in the classrooms and more use of the shared ones. Use of power strips to easily turn off a lot of appliances at once at the end of the day when you don't need them. Unplugging any appliances that they don't need to use at night, and shutting down computers and manually turning off any monitors, because otherwise they just stay on. And it's a minimal amount, but with our 290 computers and 285 monitors, it really adds up and makes a big difference when we can get those all turned off.
So this isn't just for teachers at Mount Abe. We'd also really like to ask just the community members of Mount Abe to think about how you're using energy, and to think about using those strategies of consolidation and unplugging, because this can really save a lot of money through electricity, but also will really help the environment and help slow climate change if we can use less electricity. So that's what we kind of like to leave you with from this presentation, especially.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move the ends report for Bob Donis down to Article 7 so that we can make some progress here. I know people want to get to the budget discussion. The first 4 articles will probably go relatively quickly. So we have a motion to either approve or disapprove the reports of the Union High School District officers. Those are the reports that are contained in your blue book. So do we have a motion with respect to those?
I'll make the motion.
To approve it?
Yes.
You have to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. I make the motion to approve the reports as presented in the blue book.
Okay, Anita Bedard, and is there a second? And you are?
Blair Hall.
Blair Hall. Blair Hall, thank you. So we have a motion made and seconded. Is there discussion with respect to this article?
Is that just these report?
Yes.
Okay.
Not including the budget. It's just talking about the report of the principal, the report of superintendent of schools, the report of the school directors, and the financial reports that are in here, but not the budget.
What about this memo?
received them when we first walked in or not, but I haven't read it yet, so I don't feel I can vote.
Okay, and Silver?
Okay, I have something that I know the board knows about because it's been mentioned in school board meetings, but I hadn't realized that it had been also discussed last year. And that is during the annual meeting in 2011, the voters voted Article 7, which asked, shall the voters of said Union High School District establish a reserve fund for the purpose of cushioning future deficits with a fund limit of no more than $200,000 and so forth. And I was looking for it in this year's annual report, and I did not see it. And then I noticed that last year it was brought up earlier under Article 1, and it said, BFAR asked where the $200,000 surplus shows up in the budget, and EGOMO explained it's a fund balance, which shows in the audit report, and it was requested to show the detail in the annual report. And I would like to know where this reserve fund shows up, how much is in it at the moment, and since we haven't had any deficits, has any money been spent out of this fund? Thank you.
Mr. Mansfield, would you be the one to answer that question?
Can you point out the place in the...
Yeah, I can.
It's right in the
Is that on page
minutes under
25?
Article 1, page 25. That long paragraph, it's got the 5 lines down. It says BFAR asked for the $200,000 surplus shows up in the budget. You go more explain as a fund balance, which shows in the audit report. It's requested to show the detail of in the annual report. I'm sure that Ms. Farr, where is she? She was here. Probably has the same question.
So,
Jim? Yes.
Can I attempt to address
Yes,
that?
Mr. Adams.
Thank you. It is not in this report. I know that one request was made that audit balance typically occurs within the audit. That's what the former business director reported. But we do not have that available. We certainly could make that available and return to our records, but it is not here tonight.
Okay, Silver.
So if I were to ask about it again at the next regular board meeting, you have that information?
Yeah, I would anticipate we could have that, if the audits have been completed, we could have that posted on our website most likely tomorrow. But certainly, yeah. There was a second part of the question, I think.
How much money is in the fund? And since we haven't had any deficits for it to cushion, because that's what its purpose was, has any money been spent, and if so, on what?
We'll provide that information tomorrow. I don't know what the actual amount is. To my knowledge, no money has been expended from that particular fund. That's a set-aside fund.
Thank you. Any other questions on the reports in Article 1? Hearing none, the motion made was that the reports be approved. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The motion carries. Article 2 is to establish the salaries for the elected officers of Union High School District number 28. The current salaries can be found on Article 2 from the minutes last year at the top of page 26, which are board members $1,000, board chair $1,500, treasurer $2,100, moderator $50, clerk $100, and auditors $10 an hour. Is there any motion that someone wants to make with respect to Article 2? Are you moving that the salaries remain the same?
Remain the same.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Bob Bernstein. Bob Hall, sorry, Bob.
You're forgiven.
I'm getting older, you know. All right, is there any discussion on our Article 2? Hearing none, we'll move to the question.
Sorry.
Yes.
The treasurer, it says $2,100.
That's right.
Is that per year or per month?
That's per year. These are annual salaries, except for the auditors.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions about Article 2? So the motion was made that the salaries remain the same as last year. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and Article 2 is carried. The salaries will remain the same as last year. Article 3 is to elect officers from the nominations from the floor. The officers to be elected are a moderator, a clerk, a treasurer, and an auditor for a term of 3 years. Nominations do not require seconds, so I'll take nominations for all offices at one time. I'll just write them down. So, yes, Nancy.
And Marsh for moderator.
Can you read who
Okay. I'm sorry.
Can you read who they go?
Last year we had Nick. I was nominated for moderator. Karen Wheeler was nominated for clerk. Karen Wheeler was nominated for treasurer. Betty Farr was, well, it doesn't matter for auditor. It has to be a new person anyway. So, because you can't all nominate the same person who's already seated. Yes.
I'll nominate Karen Wheeler for those two positions, clerk and treasurer.
Treasurer. Excuse my spelling, just ignore that. Are there any further nominations for any of those positions? See, yes, Ms. Silver.
I don't know.
We need a nomination also for auditor.
Yeah, but for treasurer, I don't know if there is anyone who'd be willing, but it'd be good if we, after the years we had of embezzlement followed by lost funding, it'd be good if we had somebody who was willing to do that outside of, who was outside of the superintendent's office. And if there's anybody who's willing, I'd be quite willing to nominate you. Some public spirited, no.
Is there anyone who's going to take Ms. Tilburg up on her offer? Okay. Do we have any nominations for the position of auditor? That's an important role, and if we don't nominate somebody, I guess the school board will have to appoint somebody to that position. Yes.
I would like to nominate Kathy Barrett.
And is Kathy's term that is expiring?
Yes.
Do we know if she's willing to serve? Does anybody know if she's willing to serve? I guess she can always resign if she doesn't like it. It's been the long-term tradition of the Addison County Bar Association to elect as president the people who do not show up for the meetings.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we have nominations for moderator of myself, Karen Wheeler for clerk and treasurer, and Kathy Barrett for auditor. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, I'll declare the nominations closed and entertain an appropriate motion.
I'll make
Yes,
the motion to approve the slate as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Done. All right. All those in favor of the slate as presented, do you need me to read that again? Okay. Okay, that would be myself as moderator, Karen Wheeler as clerk and treasurer, and Kathy Barrett, whose term is expiring this year as auditor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and the slate is elected. Article 4 is to elect a community representative to serve the Patricia A. Hannaford Regional Technical School District Board of Directors to finish the last year of a 3-year term expiring in 2016. In other words, is this Fred Baser's term?
No, this was Bob Hall was, and then he resigned.
Okay, so this is completing the term that Bob Hall held. And therefore, it goes until next year when we will be electing a person for the full 3-year term. Is there a motion? And self-nomination is allowed and encouraged to serve on that important board.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, please. Yes,
The board representative to the Hannaford Center?
That's Kim Farnham.
So this is supposed to be the community representative, somebody from the community. It's often a business person. Yes,
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Is this Bob's seat?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes. For a year.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
From the Hannaford Board.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So as to fill that position.
I nominate Bob.
Bob, perhaps you could just very briefly just state what you do as a member of the board so that people would know and perhaps somebody would volunteer to do that. Either talk loudly or pick up the mic.
That's okay. It's really a nice position. I'll tell you, that school is a magnificent school. I wish that Mount Abe had more participation. Unfortunately, this school has the lowest participation at the Hannaford Center of the 3 sending schools. You go to a meeting about once a month. There's cookies and coffee and things like that. It's really quite informal, and what you're deciding is basically how you're operating that particular school district, because the Hannaford Center is a school district of its own. I resigned because I was getting too old to go to meetings tonight. I just felt it wasn't my bag anymore. But it's a rewarding position, and I hope that somebody young and full of ambition will take the spot and do a good job.
Yes, Benita.
I would like to nominate Denny Casey as the member to go to finish out Bob's term. I think that Denny would be a fabulous addition to the Hannaford board.
Is Denny here?
He is.
Denny, would you stand up?
What nights do you meet?
It was Wednesday. Penny Rancher.
Denny, are you willing to be nominated?
Sure.
Are there any other nominations or self-nominations? Yes.
Hi, I'm Ellen Repstead from Bristol. I'd like to nominate Richard Frozelo.
So we've got Denny. What's his last name?
Casey.
Casey. And Richard. Case.
Frozelo. I'll spell that.
Oh, you better.
F as in Frank. R-O-S-O-L-O-N-E.
Okay. Hey, that is super.
I'd like to take this opportunity to withdraw.
Gosh, I was so excited that we had Are there any other nominations or self-nominations? So we have one left standing, Richard Fossalone, and can we have an appropriate motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the nomination of Richard Fossalone for the Hanford Career Center Board.
So you're moving to elect him
Yes.
as our
Yes.
community representative to the Patricia Hanford Board. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And we have a second. We have seconds all over the place, but yeah, the environmental teacher.
Caroline Camara.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion regarding this? Hearing none. The motion is to elect Richard Fossalone as our representative, community representative to the Patricia Hanford School District for a term ending in 2016. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. You are elected, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Now we come to Article 5, which is the budget discussion. This is a discussion-only article. There is no motion that can be made on this article because it is going to be voted at the time of the town meeting in your various towns. So this is purely for discussion, and it's sort of a question and answer. If people have questions, we'll try to figure out who the most appropriate person is to answer. I'd like to take, if people have, I'd like to take a variety of people before I call on a person a second time. But Mr. Whitner, you seem to have a question early on, so I'm going to give you the first shot at a question on the budget.
Pam,
Yes.
I don't think he heard you.
Oh, okay.
She's talking to you.
No, I don't.
Do you have a question about Mr. Whitner? I wanted to give you the first shot because you had expressed an interest earlier in the budget. Do you have a question that you would like to raise about the budget?
Well, could you go over some of the changes in the budget? There are some areas that went from, for example, like 1.5 to 4 million in FY15 and 16. So can you explain why the increases?
Okay, I'm going to let...
It's on page, well...
You have the page that is super. Makes it much easier.
And I think it had to do with the supervisory office and the changed from, I didn't have the book, but it was in the back of the Starksboro on page 108, and I'll get it out.
Okay, the supervisory union budget is not one that we vote directly. But we can ask Mr. Adams to explain any change in the supervisory union budget, which is set forth on page 22.
Under supervisory union assessment.
Okay, but the budget itself is on page 22 of your report.
And then you have quite an increase under in both those areas there.
It's on page 9, at the very bottom of page 9, is the supervisory union assessment in the Mount Abraham budget.
Okay. So are you looking at the very bottom of page 9 on line 5331?
He's in the Starksboro book.
Or are you reading from the Starksboro book?
I'm reading here, and it shows that the supervisory union revenue budget, the assessment it was no assessment, and it went to 4.258 in fiscal year 15 and 16. It's also 4.1.
Page 24 in the blue book.
Okay, so it's page 24.
Okay. So really you have the expense budget for the supervisory union on pages 21 and 22, and you have the revenue budget on page 24. And again, the supervisory union budget is included in, it's assessed to each of the individual schools within the thing, but maybe the superintendent could just address any major changes in the supervisory union budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay, Alan, I think we're on page 24.
Could you pick up your mic?
You're on 24 on the top.
Yeah, three lines down. 3 lines down. It's 1932 4000.07, that sped assessment. That increase of $4 million.
Yeah.
What occurred in the course of complying with what's known as Acts 153 and 156, the supervisory union is now required to provide special education services at the supervisory union level. That $4.258 million was reduced from local budgets and moved into the supervisory union budget. That's what that reflects. And this year, in the FY16, it's a proposal that actually reduces special education costs across the district.
So, how does that, equal off? Because the budget, you know what I'm saying? How does that affect the whole budget?
Okay, so if you look down towards the line here, and actually this is a revenue page, which is a little harder. Let me see if I can have a more representative budget. But actually, let's just say in the revenue line, but this is not. Just for way of explanation, so what occurred is that there was a shift of costs from local budgets to the tune of 4.258 last year, and this year the cost has been reduced to 4.188. But those costs are no longer seen in the local budgets. It's been a shift of the cost because of a shift of the legal responsibility for that educating those students in IEPs.
Yes. I'll get you next.
Stephanie for Starksboro. Just question, curious. So does that mean instead of school by school, the supervisory union is taking care of that budget? Is that right?
So special ed costs are now covered in the supervisory union budget.
Okay. I was just wondering.
And it gets assessed back to each town.
Okay. 'Cause I know a lot of people are losing their jobs, and I'm just wondering where the money's going. So, anyways.
Okay, so I think that question is, if I interpreted correctly, that some perhaps paraeducators or other people in special ed may be losing their jobs next year. Am I interpreting your question correctly?
Yes, I guess the question is, if the money is going towards paraeducation, why are paraeducators being fired?
So,
well, let me clarify. Individuals, no one's being fired. Let's get that very clear. Within this budget, there are staff reductions in the SU budget as well as the Mount Abraham budget, but it is not by way of firing. Within some of the school district towns and Mount Abraham, there is a negotiated agreement that requires reduction in force processes to protect employees' rights, which includes recall rights should new positions open in the future for a period of time. So I want to be very clear. In terms of the budget, the reductions in the spending does come as a result of reductions in some staffing levels. That is correct. But it is not directly a function of moving it into the supervisory union. No one was aware, at least to my knowledge, the community and the boards were not aware in FY14 that we actually had spending levels for more than $4 million for special education. And this simply isn't for paraeducators, it's for all special education services, including teachers, administrators, supplies and materials, things of that nature as well. But it is a cost shift. It's very dramatic. It does affect the bottom line. If you look that where even though we're on the revenue page, it increases the supervisory union very substantially here. And that's a major change in terms of our overall system operations here that the boards have been very vigilant about throughout the year in terms of assuring that there are some controls on the spending. One control on the spending is to only have an adequate number of staff, not to overstaff any particular part of our operation.
I'm going to take other questions before I take it. Yes, sir.
Hi, Bill Brown from Bristol. It seems like the Vermont education is going to go through a hellacious period here. Obviously, we can't stand an 11 or 12% increase in our taxes every year. That's not sustainable. But on the flip side of this, if you right-size the amount of professionals to some other ratio, what in fact happens to the quality of education? That concerns me tremendously. My second concern is also my taxes. I mean, if you pay $4,000 in taxes and assuming your town is flat, you have 7 or 8% increase in the taxes you will pay per year. And if you run along at 11 or 12%, within 5 years you're going to double your taxes. I mean, we all know that's just math. But my real question is, what is going to happen here? In 2017 or 2018, do we see a leveling off? Question number one. Question number two is, 2018, 2019, are we still giving the kids the quality of education that we give them today? How does that work? That to me is a huge question.
Is there anybody who wants to reply to that? Or
female who address the changes in how we're looking at education.
Gail, do you feel like you want to take part of that on? David Adams?
I certainly am happy to respond, but I do know that there are board members here who share your concern, as I do. We are in a tremendous state of change and flux within the state for all kinds of different reasons. Change in expectations, change in some of the needs that we have of students who are not special education eligible. And we're going through a period of difficult times. I agree with you. And some of our towns, we reflect very closely those bar graphs that you saw with education spending growing within 4 years in one town about 17%. And there is this very difficult balance between providing quality and actually providing it at an affordable cost. And thematically, this board has in fact instructed me and continue to work with the administration to try to find that balance. The question remains, will we have the same level of quality? What hasn't occurred yet is that we really weren't certain of what the quality of services under the more decentralized approach to special education. There's a great deal of public interest, as there should be, in this problem, but it is a dilemma. I shared that with you. And each of the boards that represent the districts that are make up Mount Abraham have struggled themselves, and they've struggled mightily because there's a variety of factors that go into it. This is a great forum to ask these questions and to stay involved. But I do really invite the board members to speak to that, because that, in accomplishing my work, my responsibility is to have deliverables in terms of quality instruction for students at the same time at affordable cost. And it's been very difficult here. We, as a school community, try very hard to speak to the needs of this fiscal plan here, which really, in many ways, represents the center of our five-town communities here. But the voters spoke loud and clear that the formulas that we put together for tax rate increases were just wholly unsatisfactory, and there'll be some discussion about that here. So this balance of costs and the burden of the taxpayer, as well as the challenges that our teachers have in terms of addressing the Common Core, addressing student needs, are at a very important point here, that we need continued community support to try to solve these challenges together. Because as that situation analysis spoke to, the resources aren't forthcoming. We are not going to get more resources. We have to figure out the best way for us to do this here for our community. But I think I really invite the board to speak to this.
Is there anyone on the board who would like to address that issue?
I will.
Okay.
I think that the thing that guides us, we have really good EDS policies here that we developed with the communities in the 5 towns to think about what we want for our kids, and they're listed on our website. Are they in the book here? I haven't noticed that part. But it talks very clearly about the goals for educating our kids. And that is always the primary focus of any of the discussions that we have at the board level with our administrators, and will continue to be so. I think that some of the changes that they're talking about right now in Montpelier about actually looking at the district, looking at this supervisory union as a potential single district, I believe that that's something that will help with thinking about the equity, thinking about making sure that kids are really getting what they need, because it'll be looking at it from a bigger picture and not just from the individual buildings. And so I have confidence that what we've got here, as difficult as it's going to be, is going to actually be a big opportunity. We really haven't changed education very much in 100 years. We really haven't. And we are poised right now that everything that we hear, individualized learning, all of the different opportunities that are coming up and things that we're looking at for kids, there are opportunities that are really exciting. And sometimes you have to get squeezed down into a little tiny place before you can explode out. And I think that communities, as long as we can stay open-minded, as long as we can stay forward-thinking, and move forward with the opportunities in mind rather than the hardships, I truly believe that we will not only maintain our quality of education, we are going to improve our quality of education. And I have faith in that, and I know how hard all of us work on that and think about that, and our administrators do tremendously important work in that all the time. And so that's the way I feel about it. This is an opportunity. We can be afraid and we can say, no, we don't want to change it, but we've got to change it. And let's do it and be creative and think about it from a whole different kind of viewpoint. That's my view.
All right, are there further questions? Yes, this Spanish teacher. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name. Simone.
Yes.
My daughter was in your class.
Yeah, I'm Simone Scared. I teach Spanish here at Mount Abe. And I mean, I do think we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Because, I think it's a given that having a good, strong school system attracts people to the town or to the area. And not having a good, strong school district is a real deterrent for people wanting to live in this area. And the other thing I've been wondering, I live in town, so I'm a taxpayer, and I wonder about the state mandates coming down in terms of personalized learning, the PLPs, and what the pressure that's going to put on the school district and the school budget to provide that kind of a structure for a school to do it well. Because maybe I don't know enough about it, but it would seem to my way of thinking that it is going to require a fairly small teacher-to-student ratio. But because of the pressures on the budget, we're having to move towards a bigger student-to-teacher ratio. And I'm just wondering if what the board thinks about the anticipated cost of implementing what is something that we're required to do, which is have PLPs, personalized learning plan for each student. And what do you see as additional pressure on the budgets going down the road?
Is there anyone on the board that can answer that question? Whether the personal learning plans that are required by state law are going to put additional budgetary pressure on the budget? David?
I'd be happy to speak, but you were looking for board input.
I was looking for board, but I'm not seeing anybody on the board saying, yes, someone talk.
I'll speak.
Okay, Bob.
Personalized learning is something that I support 100%. Got a green light on.
Talk into it.
Hello? Can you hear me? I support personalized learning 100%. I've seen it work here at Mount Abraham, the personalized learning department, where students take what's really of interest or a passion of theirs.
I'm seeing signals from people that they need more volume, so.
More volume? How's that? All right. Hear about the one? No. Personalized learning, as I speak it too slowly, sorry, but too softly, but I've seen it work here at Mount Abraham with students who have taken a passion of theirs, an interest of theirs, and develop the educational learning of the core subjects around that interest. And so they're engaged in their own personal learning. And I do think that is a very important aspect that reaches students that haven't been reached before and creates equity, what we talked about in that slideshow. It helps to create that equity. So I support that. The cost, yes, there's a cost associated with that, but I think it goes a long way towards meeting the ends policies that we have established as a community.
All right, Brad, you had your hand up.
Yes, hi, Brad Gold, New Haven. I just wondered, could someone comment on the physical or the ADM counts on page 8, reconcile those to the equalized pupils on page 5. you know, obviously we were forecasting a major drop, but more importantly, what are the models for the next few years? You know, what does that trend look like?
David, maybe you want for that?
I can give you part of that answer, and I don't know, if you give me a minute, we might be able to tell you what the trends are here. I can tell you that actually, if you look at the K-12 configuration, you'll see, and if I can just speak to what we predict is going to happen. So currently FY15, the actual seat count of students, the head count of kids here at Mount Abraham is 752. In 2016, it's at 711. So we're encountering a drop of 41 actual students within 1 year, incoming 7th graders, outgoing 12th graders. So that is our count. And this particular 6th grade class, the good news is that it's quite small. There's only 85 students among the 5-town area in 6th grade. So that's a significant factor. It does stabilize a little bit in the 5th grade, in the 4th grade, 133 to 136, but then it goes down again to 110. So we are actually more concerned about the funding formula changing because we do get, I don't want to say credit, but we get the formula for our funding and our tax rate is based upon what's called an equalized pupil. So there's a mathematical formula that addresses what the cost of a student is through this term called equalized pupils. And if you look on another part in this budget report, actually, if you look on page 5, you'll see in section 13, it's just in the mid part of the page, it speaks about ed spending for equalized pupil. And if you notice what I just spoke to you about in terms of in FY16, our records show we'll have 711 students. The state formula says we have 795 equalized pupils. And the formula for identifying how much money needs to be raised locally is not based upon 711, it's based upon 795. So even though we'll have some stabilization of student enrollment, the way the funding formula occurs is that in future years, without changes at the state level, or if there are changes at the state level, which they're predicting, you know, I know Mike's in the audience, he probably can speak to this as well as anybody. The amount of money that needs to be raised by taxes is a function of what those equalized pupils are. And if you look at page 5 and spend some time studying that, it speaks to this gentleman's question right here in terms of what the education spending has been. And again, it's reinforced by the situational analysis the board provided in that FY13, we were spending $13,960 per student, and here it is in FY16, 4 years later, the proposed budget is $15,263. So the costs are increasing substantially based upon our current finance system and this impact of declining the student enrollment. So the challenges are very real. But I would agree also with Benita that this is an opportunity. Now there was an earlier question from Simone about what's the cost of personal learning plans. Well, there is some cost associated with that, whether it's professional development for our teachers or working through some technology program to use electronic portfolios for our students. But there's other associated issues with state compliance, concussion management requirements, which are all well intended, and several other things that impact us. So we continue to get some tensions within the system. The good news for Mount Abe, I believe, was the ENS policies and the fact that a school improvement grant took place here about 5 years ago, which infused a huge amount of money into the district. Not necessarily for for any great benefit for the facility, but it required the school to take a look at itself and to build on the traditions of independent learning opportunities for students and begin to personalize learning. In the high school transformation that this faculty has done, and you see it through student voice right here, and I don't only mean our singers, but also the voice here in terms of the environmental club, is that the teachers and students know one another. They're poised to personalize learning, which is incredibly important. The budget does have these positions now as coaches. So we have math and literacy people that were formerly paid for by a grant that are now locally funded. And the network that Mount Abe has established with other like-minded schools, the League of Innovative Schools would be one, the I3 group is another, the secondary school group known as TASK would be a third. Those things, in fact, are really sustaining the change here. And the local budget does support that, but there are more and more challenges, and there will be some impact here. That's why we've done our best to provide a budget here that, in fact, spends overall less than the year before and increases what the voter has, or the taxpayer has to contribute by 3.8%. So it's a very strong effort to control the spending, but in spite of controlling the spending, our actual operating costs have gone up based upon this equalized formula. And if you look at page 5, you'll see that. So these challenges are real for all of us.
I believe part of Mr. Bull's question, and he can correct me, is could you explain the difference between average student membership and equalized pupils? Is that right? Was that part of the question?
I was actually going to ask sort of a follow-up. When you look at the incoming 6th, 5th, 4th, 85, 133, 136, how many do you actually get? I mean, is there a net drain going on, or is that a data point that is just not? How do you model that? Are we losing population? Is it safe to say we'll actually get those people, those students?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true, we're losing population, Brad, and you're aware of that, okay, overall. I don't have the number, but I believe within the last 10 years, there were about 1,800 students within the supervisory union. Now we're down to about 1,523. So we are reducing students. And this year, this is the biggest, this is having the impact. And this conversation has been going on for many years. It's just now hitting Mount Abe as these students have come through, for the last 5 or 6 years through the system.
Oh, we got hands up all over the place, but yes, go ahead.
I was just wondering, David, if you would be willing to share why the equalized pupil came about, and sort of what it's really confusing, and I think, but it's really eye-opening when you sort of look at why they kind of came up with that buffer and why it might sometime go away, and where that puts us sort of in the middle.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll try. So it's been known for many years, for a fair number of years, that enrollment has been declining. The state has done two things. The state has put a cap on how much you can spend, and you notice that it's called the excess spending threshold. So if you spend at a particular level, this year it's $17,100. Any dollar over that amount, you get double taxed for. So the state has built in these buffers for you to stop spending. The state also, though, provided somewhat of a parachute effect called, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it prevents the reduction in equalized pupils by no more than 3.5%. So we knew enrollment was declining. The state didn't want a school district to have to yo-yo their budgets because the enrollment went down and then it went up and it went down. They capped it and allowed us to only reduce the equalized pupil number by 3.5% per year. And as a result, you have what's an inflated number of equalized pupils. And it's now known within the vernacular in Montpelier as phantom students. We don't have 795. We don't have 795 students. We actually, for next year, we actually going to have 711. If you, and by the way, if you take a look at, and I do apologize if I'm going on too long, I know my responsibility to be brief here, but you simply, if you look at the cost called net education spending, it happens to be on line 11 on page 5. It's a simple calculation. You divide the number of equalized pupils into education spending, and then you get your cost per spending, your cost of education spending per equalized pupils. That's the amount of money that gets raised locally. So in effect, if you divide, instead of dividing 795 into $12,140,000, you're going to divide 711 students into that number. And I haven't done that math, but you're getting much closer to that very high spending threshold, which in fact you may be double taxed. And that's the worry. We know there's declines, but the worry is, will the formula change, and will it change in a gradual enough way that we can adjust our spending to that? So Sean, I hope I came close. It is complicated.
All right, there are hands all over the place. People have already had a chance to speak. I'm not even calling you yet. So, yes, pink sweater.
Valerie Mullen from Moncton. On page 9, number line 21, 22, and 23, those are substitutes. And in actual 14, those three added up were about 44,000. And then budget 15 added those three lines was 121,000. And then it's down to 2,000. Did those numbers get shifted somewhere else? Substitute.
So looking at page 8, lines 51, 21,
page
22.
9, I'm sorry,
Page 9, I'm sorry. Lines 51, 21, 51, 22, 51, 23.
Are substitutes.
The substitutes. Do those move somewhere else? Does somebody know the answer to that question?
I can give it a try. David, correct me if I'm directing anybody to the wrong, but if you turn to page 10, the upper paragraph in line 5339, I believe that's where the sub-A is moved to. Am I correct? Right. And there's an increase in 5339, and that takes into consideration an increase in the sub-rate pay as well as moving.
So it went from 121 to 326?
It's now done by an outside company, and they are responsible for all benefits and all salary. So I believe, David, is that Howard can answer if I'm correct?
I think Howard's going to take that if you can recognize.
Okay, Howard?
Yeah, that has other professional services in there besides just the substitutes.
So are we taking, just so I can understand, so are we taking that 132 and adding it to those other three lines on the other page to come up with the 326? Because you said it shifted over. You said,
so you're looking at the 5122s
on line 21, 22, and 23, when I added them up for year 4, for actual year 14, it was about 44,000. And then I added it up for budget 15, it was about 121,000. And what I just understood I heard is it moved over to page 10. You said line 39, it's now 326. Are you saying it's more because of just benefits, or did that also get added to the 132 budget on top of these? I mean, help me to understand that.
Well, I can get started. You're pretty fast with that. So generally, let me describe what I think Dawn was explaining. What we've done for substitutes in generally. And substitutes lines are variable always because we really don't know what conditions might happen. We've increased the substitute pay from $70 a day to $80 a day. So we increased it by about 15%.
I'm sorry, hold it, you're out of order. There's already someone.
So we've increased the substitute line, so there's been an increase there in cost, okay, generally for operations. And then we took a 3-year average and we took out our high point here because we wanted to try to ensure that we have enough money. So if the line is zeroed out, it does mean that you either no longer use that or it's been shifted to another line. And I think what I heard Howard say is that there are also some other professional services there. But by and large, substitutes pay has been increased. We want to attract more substitutes and pay them competitively. We've looked at 3-year averages, and we want to try to have that line be as stable as we can.
And if I could add one thing, on the equalized pupil question, at this point, the state has received about 90% of the budgets from the towns. And last year, the equalized pupil spending average in the state of Vermont was $13,909. This year it's $14,347. We're in excess by a considerable amount of those benchmarks as the state average. And I just want to make you aware of that. So we are spending in this district a lot more per pupil than the Vermont state average. That helps you maybe understand some of it.
I'm looking, are there new hands? Nancy?
Oh, I have so many questions, but just in relation to what Howard just said, on page 15, there's an attempt, I think, by the state of Vermont, this information comes from, to look at comparable schools and to look at their equalized spending per pupil. And it looks like we're kind of in the middle of the pack there.
Yep. Well, I have the stats here if you want to look at it. It's an email from Brad James, who's the finance director at the AOE, and this is what he sent me as of today.
So this must be information, well, this is FY for the current.
That's correct. That's correct.
David,
15, 16 budget.
2000.
This is the 14 year.
Page 15 shows the data from FY14.
We're currently in FY15, and then we're looking at the budget for FY16.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. If you look at the top 2014 school level data, that's what I was looking at.
If you look at the bottom, it's comparing the spending per equalized pupil across comparable schools, I think.
Yeah, no, you are correct. I think Howard was sharing some late-breaking information.
This is the information that I was
read today.
You're more than welcome to look at.
But the real question I wanted to ask, if I could, I've heard, I haven't been closely watching as the board has been building this budget, but I've heard that the proposed budget includes significant reductions in professional staff. What I heard was 8.5 positions of professional staff. But I haven't heard, so I've heard that, I don't know if it's true, and I haven't heard what the reductions, if there are reductions in the budget for support staff or for special education staff. So I'm very curious about what staff reductions are represented in this budget and what programs those reductions are going to affect.
Is there someone who can answer that question?
So that is correct. It is 8.55 full-time equivalents. That includes, though, support staff, in-person learning, and administrative support staff, what are called our tree team members. So we had undertaken an examination of class enrollment within the current schedule. And we found that class size was significantly reduced, and a fair percentage, nearly half of our classrooms were populated with less than 12 students. And we did do an analysis of the past 3 years in terms of enrollment trends, and believe that we can provide adequacy of coursework and enrollment based upon these current numbers. Now, within this budget, which had you followed some of the development of it, it's also a restructuring of the administrative office. So several years ago, we had a late year resignation, an August resignation. One of our principals, assistant principals here, took an elementary position, and we filled that position temporarily with a couple of staff members who were not trained administrators. What we are going to do is restore a traditional administrative team with a principal to assistant principals, and we move towards a director of guidance model as well. A number of these changes that need to be put into place relative to personal learning plans, proficiency-based graduation requirements, will require some additional supervision and management of student services, so that's what we've added there. So even though there are some staff reductions, there are some additional investments in this administrative area, as well as the student support area.
David, I think Nancy's question partly was, where specifically are those reductions being made?
So I think I indicated support staff, personal learning, and the administrative team. Also in English, science, and math, and foreign language, industrial arts, art, physical education, and driver's ed. We also have a part-time 504 coordinator position, which would be replaced through a K-12 student support position, and that's funded at the SU level. And essentially, that's a position that can be served here at Mount Abe, as well as the elementary levels.
Madam Moderator, I just have a question. It involves ratios.
Well, excuse me, I haven't recognized you. I've called on you several times, and there's lots of other people that have their hands up. So I will get to you, but you don't have a privileged motion that gets you ahead of everybody else who's got hands up. I will get back to you, though. Okay? Yes, sir, with the blue jacket.
Dale Hunter from Bristol. Can you explain for me one more time why we have reduced number of students, reduced number of teachers, but we need an increased administrative staff?
Please. David, are you the right one to answer that? Okay. Our principal, Lana, is going to answer.
So I wasn't here during the transition when the team of administrators was put in place. I am part of the team that's looking to restore that traditional model of principal to assistant principal. So we're looking to have an assistant principal that can support the middle school and a assistant principal to support the high school. Those would be licensed professionals, licensed teachers, which is different than the current model that we have right now. Right now, one of our administrative liaisons is not a licensed teacher.
So I'm going to pick people who have not spoken yet, so yes, sir. Yes.
Mike Crane, Bristol. That listing of positions that was just listed as the PE teacher on the low ring, I was wondering if the people in those positions have been notified already.
So I've been working closely with the school counseling department to have all of our students submit their course requests for next year. And we just started looking at those numbers at our teacher leader meeting today. We delivered those numbers to the teacher leaders. And those are the numbers that we're going to use to determine what the needs are in our building. And we're really looking to use the needs of our students to determine what the staffing model looks like. I've been trying to have conversations with, at one point or another over the past few months, the teachers that would be impacted by staffing changes, and we continue to have those conversations and will until we're able to make all of our final decisions based on the student needs.
Contractually, you have to let them know right now that they don't have a position.
Excuse me, sir, you haven't been recognized. Do you have a brief follow-up?
I would like to, that same question. Would I have been
When is the
notified?
notification date in the contract?
So there's two processes here. One, there are contract requirements for staff to be notified, and as well as have the opportunity to address the board with notifications. Currently, you have an adopted budget by the board. We do not have a budget approved by the voters. It's important that people understand that that process of voter adoption of the budget will then determine, with some other factors such as student enrollment, it'll determine what type of contracts can be offered. But it's premature until there's an approved voter budget to actually begin any type of reduction in force notification.
But isn't there a date in the contract by which you need to notify of a
There is, I
potential
believe it's April 1st.
Okay. Thank you. Light blue shirt, did that answer your question? Yes?
No, I was just saying yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Yes, Wanda.
I'm Wanda Bouvier from Bristol, and I'd like to know, could somebody tell me what the cost right now is of all the current students that we're outsourcing?
Can you just clarify? You mean by outsourcing special
I mean that are being
students,
provided,
or-
not necessarily, that are being provided education outside of our district for whatever need that may be.
That money is paid for. Okay. Do you know that?
Let me check. It exceeds $80,000. And I would have to check, but we do have a budgeted amount here, but currently it exceeds $80,000. It exceeds $80,000, correct. And in the current FY15 budget.
And as we all know, the reduction in our ability to be able to provide special education services and/or additional services to students that have learning disabilities, those monies are getting lower as well. Can you tell me how we're going to prevent having to outsource more students if we don't have programs to assist them in the school?
David?
Wanda, I'm not precisely sure that I understand the question. Outsourcing, we're not sending jobs overseas. We're trying
That's
to.
not what I'm suggesting.
We're trying to meet the specific needs of students who, for whatever reasons within their life, aren't able to be educated here within the physical confines of the building. And there have been those student needs have been present in past years, and they're present this year, and will likely to be present in the future. What we want to do is ensure that we build capacity, pre-K through high school, for our kids to get high-quality first instruction, and then we have the supports in place to respond to their needs, irrespective of categorical descriptions, IEP or 504. We want to be able to serve all students at the highest levels. We have to work together to develop systems in order to do that.
All right. Okay, the...
I just want to talk about another population of students, accelerated students. We haven't discussed that tonight. We're talking about making class sizes larger. I know a lot of the accelerated classes for students are often smaller, such as the middle school math classes. So in this budget, the biggest class in budget, there might be some accelerated classes to be cut. And that would be a big concern of mine. That's just a population that has been discussed this evening, that students will be challenged, hopefully in every class and every grade, to their level, and not have to go see. No, that's no. I mean, just making sure that that population is addressed in the school shift and change. My daughter's in that math program this year. I'd like my other kids to have a chance to get in that math program. Chemistry member is awesome. She's amazingly passionate. Most amazing teachers I've ever met. I'd like her to keep being able to do her thing. So that's just my 2 cents for this evening.
Principal Lyman?
So yeah, it's a goal for us to challenge all of our students to be proficient or exceed proficiency in all of their classes. Just looking at the preliminary numbers, I don't see that our upper level classes and our more challenging classes are going to be impacted in that way. We are definitely looking at different models to be more efficient and provide more rigorous opportunities for all students in all classes. And there has been some conversation about a shift in what the math model looks like in terms of aligning, doing a lot of different things, but one of the things we'll start with is aligning our curriculum that we offer to the Common Core, and that will cause some shifts both in the middle and the high school, specifically the math and such. That's what you asked about.
Ken Weston?
I wasn't going to raise this, but this might be a good time. Go to page 11, last line, and I realize dollar-wise it looks like a small amount. The amount we paid for Vermont advanced through the year. As most of us realize, whenever we're considering budget items, we're always looking at 2 areas that tend to suffer quite often because of that. One is sports, and the other is fine arts and performing arts. And I don't know if you folks realize, but I've been noticing over the last year or so that the Vermont Headmasters Association do an awful lot of advertising statewide in support of sports. But I've never heard one advertisement under their authorization having to do with the fine arts or the performing arts. And it seems to me that somebody in authority can put some pressure on the headmasters to keep that out of it.
Thank you. Ken? Question? Other comments? Okay. I will come back to you. But there's a reporter. You've been waiting patiently. I'm going to recognize you.
Thank you very much. I got a little passionate there for a moment. So I don't know where that extra $10 is going, but as a substitute teacher, it's not coming to me. But anyways, that's the side point. The main reason I wanted to stand up was wondering about the ratios for students, paraeducators, staff educators, and the students, and what that's actually going to look like. Since I know we have to do a lot of budget cuts and all of that, I hear rumors that like the White House might be closed down and that students that need the one-on-one will actually be put in classrooms about the size of 32. So I wasn't sure where the number of 12 came in per classroom. There's a lot of students, specifically in the high school. And I know right now there are 2 kindergarten classes in Moncton, and collectively they're about 40 to 50, I don't know, maybe 32. Somewhere between 32 and 50 kindergartners in Moncton right now. So I'm just wondering what the ratio is going to look like when they get into high school, if we're going to be chopping down paraeducators. Thank you.
Probably a little hard to predict what kindergartners are going to be doing 7 years from now, but can you answer the part about the class ratios after its budget is adopted and the cuts are made that you're anticipating?
So we are working on ratios. You heard within the presentation, if you were here in the room, what the the Secretary of Education what they described the ratio to be, in a pretty dramatic shift over several years. We're trying to sort out some of those formulas. We believe that they include the people who don't have direct services to students, so the boards are beginning to look at some data points. So finding that proper ratio is really a challenge and is going to be important. One word on ratios, and I'll try to speak to the question about the White House. The Addison Independent recently, about 2 months ago, had an editorial speaking about the ratios of staff students in Vermont and pegged it somewhere at 1.9. And I think we saw some data tonight about that. In New England, they also described it at 1.12, 1 to 12, and nationally 1 to 15. I don't know if those are the right numbers, and I don't know how those numbers were figured. We need to do what some folks are calling right sizing. At the high school, there are low enrollments in classes, and we need to continue to monitor the number of sections we can provide to make sure we have high quality sections, and for our high achieving students, that's incredibly important. We'll continue to work on that, and it's finding this balance between cost and the ratio of students to teachers in our program offering. Relative to the White House, and as well as our trailers, you should be aware that after the study within the facility in the fall, it became very clear to us that operating external satellite locations for instruction into the White House, which is what we refer to as the house coming into the campus, which was at one point a supervisory union office, I'm told, correct, Nancy? And these trailers here, that we're heating external spaces here, and we may not be able to provide the proper amount of security and supervision. So there's going to be some discussions about that, outside of any staffing issues. In terms of students with special needs, special education is highly regulated. We have a moral and ethical responsibility to serve students with disabilities, and we will ensure that all of their rights are protected under the law. It's the right thing to do, and we will meet their particular needs. We have to add that to our list of challenges. How do we make these particular changes here? But I don't see ratios of 1 to 32 or 1 to 50, but we're going to continue to have that conversation.
Can I answer the sub-pay question?
Yes.
You'd asked about the sub-pay. That's actually for this next fiscal year. So that's an increase that's coming. That's in the budget for this next year. Yeah, you were like, hey, I didn't get my raise, but yeah, so, yeah. It's coming.
That was what you were going to do too. Okay. Further questions? Yes. You have a blue shirt. Sorry.
I just would like to know, okay, so the budget for 16 is up 3.04%. However, us as taxpayers, because of, I assume, less revenue coming in from the Fed and the states, our tax bill is up 11.49%. I've got that right so far, right?
Slow down, we're shuffling papers here a little bit. So you talked about our ed spending up 3 point something percent?
The fiscal 16 budget is up a proposed 3.04% from last year.
Not overall spending, the education spending is up.
That's what I meant.
The budget, I understand, is down, but the education spending is up.
Yeah. And our tax bite is up 11.49%.
They're asking how. Do you have a page in the book?
We're getting a large, well, I'm going up to this right here. The thing I took off the website.
Oh, okay. No, that is not, can you read I'm sorry, Pam, can I address that?
Yes.
I want to be online. Just for reference, there's a lot of documents out there. Is that chart titled at all? Does it say SU assessment or does it say taxes? contribution that Mount Abraham makes to the supervisory union budget. That is not your tax rate increase.
All right.
You should find that on page 5, though. And by the way, if you look at page 5, everyone, in the upper right-hand corner, please understand these are estimates only. The legislature will identify what the actual tax rate is after they collect data about school spending. After town meeting, the legislature will set the tax rate. So if that on page 5, upper right-hand corner, estimates only. Okay. But Howard can answer that. He's done a lot of, in fact, he's done all of the tax estimate calculations for each of the towns. So, Howard, you're a Bristol resident.
Go ahead.
Well, you can see.
Okay, the Mount A rate basically is, I'm on page 5. Okay, there's another. The Mount A tax rate is 0.8144 as prorated in Bristol. The actual elementary rate is 0.620.
Page 6.
Yeah, I'm on page 6 of the blue book. So the actual tax rate for everybody in Mount A, based on the estimate, if you look in the next to the last column, it says under Mount A, 1.6137. That's the Mount A tax rate for each. That's the overall tax rate that Mount A is assessing to all the districts. However, you have to plug that number into each individual town in order to come up with that town rate. So if you look at Bristol, Bristol's total tax rate is 1.5764. That's the rate for the education only. I don't know what the town assessment would be, but that's the actual rate. And you can compare them down. Lincoln is 1.5919. Moncton is 1.6373. New Haven is 1.6163. And Starsboro is 1.5859. They're all based on the weighting of a lot of factors. So what happens is it's a difficult calculation to understand, but if you look at the previous page, on page 5, it shows you how the Mount A portion of this was calculated. And if you look down on line 25, you will see the 1.6137 rate in the far right. Do you see that? Yeah, okay. And that's where that, so it comes through this calculation of total education spending, less the revenue we have, and once you get to that level, then it's divided by equalized pupils. Okay, you go up that rate. But then it's adjusted for a weighting factor, and that's why that rate is now 1.6137. But it's the same, it brings the same number to all the towns, right? But then the town rate for the elementary schools is a different calculation because they have a different budget. And then the two are added together. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yes, Mike Boucher.
Justin Bouvier from Bristol.
Justin, I'm sorry.
So, first, I think any broad statements hurt anybody. So saying that education hasn't changed in 100 years is a slap in the face. Teachers taught 3 subjects, reading, writing, and arithmetic, 100 years ago. We not only teach those subjects, we teach other subjects, and we provide needs for the children that teachers never provided. David, Superintendent Adams has said that we're cutting only 8.5. He listed 10 positions. So I counted when he listed where they're being cut from. It was 10 different places, only 8.5 people. I am on the tree team, did not know, have not been formally told before a public meeting that my job is being reduced or not existing next year. So that feels like it's a breach of contract. However, I want to draw attention to the fact that this reserve for negotiations, I have talked to the head of VHI, which the teachers are currently on. Our insurance, if we continue on VHI, would be going up 4.5%. If you subtract 4.5% from the, or add 4.5% to our current health insurance, which is line 5211 on page 9, that's an increase of $48,000. Then if you take the leftover money, which we've been told is for teachers' salary in the professional line, 5955, that would be giving every single teacher a 5% increase. And right now, the board has proposed a 0 for negotiations. So I'm just wondering, we've never received 5, ever, maybe years and years and years ago, but I'm wondering why the board budgeted 5%, which is a substantial raise, and I'd be happy to take it. But why they budgeted at least 5% for teacher negotiations for professionals?
That's a difficult question. I don't know if you feel like you can answer it, but that needs to be subject to the negotiation.
Well, I'm not going to speak to negotiations, nor should the board, but those are very broad statements, and I think they're not completely accurate. If you have a specific budget line question, I'd be happy to attempt to address it, as I'm sure the board will.
I think he's referring to page 21, lines 5955, 5956, and 5957. Maybe 5958. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why there's $290,353 budgeted for negotiations on 5955 on page 9.
On page 9, I'm sorry.
So I'm understanding that on page 9, you're speaking to line 5955, 5956, 5959, is that correct? 590. Is that what you're speaking to? So the calculations that we've done relative to an appropriate number to set aside in good faith effort for negotiations is that number. But beyond that, I'm not going to address that. It would be inappropriate to do that.
Right, yes.
So to piggyback off Justin's question in regards to finding out the actual positional reductions that you foresee tonight, whereas some of my colleagues have already had these meetings, have already been expecting this, and people like Justin and myself are just finding this out tonight. We didn't expect to be coming to this meeting figuring we'd be reduced or cut. You can imagine our shock and horror in this, if you could explain why some people got notified and some people didn't.
I'm going to rule that question out of order for this meeting.
How come?
I think that needs to be taken up individually in discussions with the school staff. So, yes.
Just a comment about the entirety of the situation. The lack of transparency, we can really question whether maintaining an ends policy is really where we should be at. Just a comment.
Right, are there any further comments or questions regarding Article 5, which I never did read to you? I'm sure that you're so upset, but I'll read it to you just for the record. For discussion only, the vote to be taken by Australian ballot Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015, at the annual polling place and times in each respective town shall the Union High School District Number 28 adopt a budget of $14,058,551 for school year beginning July 1, 2015. We have no further discussion on that article. We'll move on to Article 6.
I'm sorry, can I just make one clarifying statement?
Yes.
I would just like to clarify, what I meant, Justin, was we haven't really changed the delivery system for school in 100 years. That's what I meant. I didn't mean at all, but you guys don't do a lot more than that.
So Article 6, to see if the voters of the Union High School District will authorize the Union High School District Board of Directors to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year as provided for in 16 VSA Section 562, subsection 9. Do we have a motion on Article 6?
I'll make a motion to
authorize this.
Yes.
Seconded by Brad Bull. Is there discussion on Article 6? Hearing none. We'll ask that Article 6 will go to a vote. The motion was to authorize the high school district board of directors to borrow money by issuance of bonds or notes not in excess of anticipated revenue for the school year. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Article 7 is to transact any other business proper to come before said meeting. We did defer to things previously, which I give priority on that if they still wish to present those.
I don't need that. Hi, I'm Shauna, and I've chaired the Facilities Advisory Committee for the past couple of years. And we've been really busy kind of engaging with the community, finding out what priorities are, visiting schools and select boards, and giving lots of tours of Mount It was almost unanimous that folks agreed that our school is in need of a makeover. What wasn't unanimous was how much money it's going to cost. Certain issues like air quality, natural light, and creating flexible learning spaces were things that topped the list. After the bond vote in November failed, our committee met, and we also joined with some interested community members that kind of came out of that whole process, and created a survey to further sort of refine what the priorities are with the building and the community and the school. So we have hard copies of that here. You can also access it online on the MtAbe website or on the MtAbe Facebook page. Another one of our goals is to sort of figure out how to reach out to folks in our community who don't necessarily spend time in this building or have kids in this building, but are taxpayers and have an interest. And also folks that don't have access to technology or don't know, they just don't have a computer at home. How can we reach them and get them to get their input so that we can further sort of guide this process? After town meeting, we'll meet as a group again, and the board will talk about sort of how we're going to look at the survey results and how we want to take it from there. Because obviously the building is still in need. That hasn't changed, and we just need to sort of figure out how to take it to the next level.
I think,
Mr. Quitner, go ahead.
you say the building's in need. I think there's more important that what happens inside the building, to me, seems like there's a great need. And using the community so juniors and seniors don't have to depend on the building. This is a design, and I've seen individualized where kids just go in a corner and nobody knows what they're doing, and they called it, and these were schools not even in Vermont, Massachusetts and Connecticut. It was chaotic because there wasn't a design, there wasn't the follow-up and enough staff to do the record keeping, to talk with the kids on what they're doing, so the kids, like the teachers, aren't wasting their time during the school day. That is why kids are here, so that they get the biggest bang for their bucks, and we're paying teachers where we should be using them to get the biggest bang. And that doesn't mean spending $30 million on that building. That means having people that are familiar designing a plan so that the curriculum can be installed outside the community. Delivery doesn't mean here. It could be any place in Addison County. It could be sharing a class in Virginia's or down in Middlebury College. Transportation, interactive learning, so kids could take a language class at Middlebury College, watch it here. Once a week they go down to the class at Middlebury College. I think we have a lot to do without, I think there are certain things that need to be done with this building, the air quality, windows and things like that, but we have a lot to do inside so kids can be outside the building.
All right. Yeah, if you haven't, Mr. Quintner already filled out a survey. I suggest you do. Is there any more discussion with respect to the building? Okay. Bob, do you still want to talk about the ENDS program?
That's appropriate, yes.
Yeah, you may.
Thank you.
Any other business?
Thank you. The ENDS policies were handed out earlier before the meeting started, so people should have that. ENDS policies and a lot of other policies too, but the first page is the ENDS policies. As was mentioned before, these ENDS policies are what we as a community want our children to know and to be able to do when they graduate from Mount Abraham to ensure that they have the best possible success as they go forward into their future, whatever path they choose to take. So right off the top, the first thing that the ENDS policy talks about are the core subjects. You have to teach the core subjects, just like English and math and science, and social studies and history, arts, health, fitness, nutrition. Those things are the core subjects that all students need to learn. But while we're doing that, we want to be able to have them navigate a very rich media environment. As you know, media is a huge thing that affects all of us these days, especially our young people. And critical thinking goes along with that in terms of what they get out of that media, how they think about it, and how they accept it, and challenge it, etc. The next biggest ENDS policy item is the life and career skills. Here we're helping students to engage actively, to pursue their own personal interests, to collaborate, to be respectful to each other, to work as team members, to be adaptable, those kinds of things that they need to be able to do and be successful in their careers down the road. Be able to value diversity and to empathize, for example. So that's number 2 in terms of ENDS policies. Number 3 is learning and innovation skills. Here we're talking about inculcating a intellectual curiosity in our youth, perseverance, being able to transfer knowledge they learn in math to things that they might learn in computer science or other areas of their knowledge base, being creative and innovative, communicating in public. We saw that today, a couple different instances. This choral group standing in front of you and singing, just a few members singing to you, and then we saw it with the environmental committee, our environmental club, speaking in public. That's an important skill for everybody to know and learn. So these are the ENDS policies that we as a community have established for Mount Abraham students. And they are community-based ENDS policies in the sense that we would take input from the community as far as whether there should be things that should be changed or added or what have you. They're not just cast in concrete. I would also point out to you that what happens with these ENDS policies is that the school board is holding the administration to these ends. And so to that end, so pardon the pun, we ask that they give us monitoring reports. periodically. So, for example, there's a schedule of monitoring reports throughout the year. February, for example, literacy and math. We get a report from the administration with evidence showing that those ends policies regarding literacy and math are being met, and we have to act on that report. In March, it's persistence, inquiry, collaboration, resourcefulness, citizenship, and passion. In April, it's social studies and history. May, social and emotional well-being. June, technology. September, the arts. And October, science. So these ends policies do in fact get monitored by the board, and the administration is asked to present the report that we have to act on. Questions? Thank you.
Are there questions? Oops. Are there questions about the ends policy? If not, are there any other issues that the remaining people would like to bring up? Yes, Dawn.
I'd just like to recognize one of our board, well, a couple of our board members aren't here tonight, but one in particular, Kim Farnham from New Haven, will not be running again, and she served in Bristol and New Haven for a total of 15 years, and I just wanted to recognize and thank her for serving on the board, the various boards.
I'd like to recognize and thank all of you who came out tonight. This meeting was the most well-attended meeting that I've seen probably at least in the last 10 years. So I really appreciate that. I know that there are quite a number of teachers that are here or were here, and that is, I think, also important that people are engaged in trying to learn about what's going on. Are there any other items that anybody would like to bring up, or should we move on to Article 8? Yes.
I was wondering if we could meet somewhere like in the cafeteria or something next year. This does not work. Can't understand everything that you're saying in the microphone. I don't know if the microphones aren't on or what, but it's too big a space for just people.
So that might be a consideration in setting up the meeting for last year. We've been doing it in the library for the last few years, and I think that would have been too small for the group that we had tonight, but thank you. Mr. Hilbert.
Just a request. I know I'm probably going deaf, but beyond that, I've heard others say the same thing. Most of us are hearing maybe half of what's being said tonight. And if anybody wants to know more about how to talk in public, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. Having had training. But such things as moving a microphone in front of you does not help. The PA system is just not doing its job, folks, I'm sorry. And you wonder why people are leaving? Probably a lot of them are leaving because they can't hear. They can't understand. So for next year, let's have a good PA system.
And go to the cafeteria.
Perhaps less spacious space that where the PA system is more effective, is what I'm hearing. Okay? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Chris Nezen. I teach in the middle school. I also live in Lincoln. I've been teaching here for over 20 years, and I too have hearing difficulties, so I appreciate your comment.
Can you speak up, please?
Yes. Thank you, Nancy.
There are some microphones up at the front too, but...
Bob, I would just like to comment about the ends policy, and it's a policy that we as a district wholeheartedly embrace. And I would just like to point out, after hearing the cuts that are going to take place in our staff here at the high school, that it really makes it difficult to understand how it is that we can have such an outstanding set of goals for our kids, while at the same time letting go excellent educators. Mike Crane just tonight found out, and I'm sorry I'm a little emotional about this because it does hit home for me. But Mike just found out tonight that he doesn't have a job. I have 6 children, 3 of which have already had Mike. He by far is the best gym teacher my kids have ever had. I work with 2 new hires in the middle school on my team. One in science and one in English. And both of these individuals are excellent, excellent teachers. They are not the kind of people you want to see go elsewhere. I do not understand how it is that, again, we can have such excellent goals and talk about personalized learning, talk about meeting the needs of every learner, and yet we're letting go excellent teachers here. It will change our program. There is no question about it. You know, it's taken us a long time to get to this point in the middle school. This is going to sink our ship. Yeah, we can find other replacements, but it's not going to do the kind of job that we're hoping to do. And it just crushes people. So I just want you to think about that. I know we have to have budget cuts. I know we want to lower our taxes. Like I said, I live in this town. I've lived here a long time. But I just ask that we try to find other ways to do this. Because we've got our heads in the right place. We've won all these great things, but we're not willing to pay for them. Maybe that's what I would like to leave with tonight.
Thank you. Principal Lyons?
Chris makes a really good point. It's going to be really hard to replace some of our very best teachers. That's not something that's going to be easy.
I understand the word you're saying. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Thank you. I wish I'd known before, and then I could have used my big teacher voice. So the point that Chris makes about losing staff and the impact that that's going to have on the entire staff is an important one, and it's one that's not taken lightly, at least not by myself. Superintendent Adams gave us a long laundry list of departments that will be impacted. It's not a one-for-one. It's not necessarily a one person from each department. Those are pretty much all the departments in the building, and all the departments will be impacted in some way or another because we're losing so many students over the course of the last few years. We've had lots of conversations in the building. We've had conversations with teacher leaders about what those impacts are going to look like and how we're going to best meet those needs. And it's really all about what it is the students need, and that's our primary focus, is maintaining the really strong instructional practice, the best programs that we have, and that's what's dictating the staffing, some of the staffing changes. That and our commitment to the contract and seniority and trying to make all that fit together is definitely a difficult puzzle and not one that is easy for any of us.
Yes.
And
use the mic.
Thank you. If I can just say that it's really always a challenge when we have to try to figure out how to cut costs. And the vast majority of costs in any school is staff. And we have been knowing for years that we were going to come to the place where we were going to really have to look at the staffing issues. And right-sizing staff is something that is happening all over the state, or needs to be happening all over the state. And it's a hard thing, but somehow we have to be able to find a way to continue to educate our kids and do it well, but we have to be able to cut costs. And that means we have to be able to cut staff sometimes. And it makes it hard for the staff that's being cut. It makes it hard for the staff who is still here after the cuts happen. It's hard for the neighbors of the staff that are being cut and the friends. But somehow we have to be able to do it, because otherwise we won't be able to have a school that can be funded. So I just think that it's really important to realize that somehow we have to be able to come to terms with the fact that cuts have to happen. And it's unfortunate if people would just have more babies. I think that would be a big answer, and I would encourage that. But in the meantime, we've got to find a way to be able to afford to provide public education for kids. It's our job to do that. That's our only job. Our responsibility is to the kids. We can't, there's like layers of responsibilities, and we can't promise that because somebody is hired here that they're going to be here forever. It's not possible. We can't be a lifetime employer, and that doesn't make it that we don't appreciate who the people are, because we do. But that doesn't mean that we can just keep people on forever. We have to find a way to find a balance. It's the same as any budget in the world. It's the same as your own personal life. We have to find a way to make those balances happen. And that's what we're trying to do. And it's hard. It's not easy to do. It's not easy for anybody at this table. It's not easy for anybody in this audience. But somehow we have to be able to do it. And I feel like there's a realistic view that we have to be able to come to on that. And so I hope that we'll be able to all get together and still be friends.
Yes, sir.
How in the world are we going to be able to afford the $33 million
Louder, so that you don't have the mic.
How in the world are we going to be able to afford the $33 million bond 4 months ago? 4 months later, we're out of money and we've got to cut costs. I don't understand that.
Any other questions or comments under Article 7? Yes, David?
Thank you. There's two things, if I could, and please, I have difficult hearing as well, and I know that fan background noise does create some extra challenges for us. But
I'm not good at that,
so just a word about transparency and about process and participation. And by the way, I want to thank each of you for your contributions to this process. Annual meetings and Vermont town meetings are a tremendous tradition, and I certainly appreciate the debate. I do appreciate, though, respectful conversation among individuals. We each have roles to play in the process, and the voters have a role to play to either accept or reject this budget. If this budget is rejected, any personnel plan that we've contemplated has to be re-examined. So I would like to assure you that conversations have been held with people, but without certainty, because we don't have certainty until we have a budget. After a budget is finally approved, we will work as best we can to support our staff with staff changes. We certainly hope that attrition will play a significant role. In fact, we've already received some teacher retirements, and we know that some of our young people are moving across country to do other exciting things in their lives. So we are certainly hopeful that we will make some of these changes through attrition. But after that, there is a process for the Teachers Association to be heard, to come before the board, and then the board to publicly act relative to any reduction in force. So there is a process to take place. This is one part of it, but I want to assure you that it has been transparent. If you had followed this budget conversation, the board's experience in early October, the situational analysis, some members of the board attended regional meetings with the School Boards Association and heard the Secretary of Education being given a directive by the governor to talk to school boards. We have developed a staffing strategic patterns to build the budget over months And these conversations have been had in public session with the board. But I want to assure you, we do care about people. We care about our kids first and foremost, but we can ask for your continued support of the efforts for this particular challenge and this budget, or whatever the next challenge may be. And this facility is going to continue to be a challenge in one way, shape, or another. So I clearly understand the question, how could we have made the proposal in the fall and made this proposal now? We've got a different, in my view, different reality right now, and we heard loud and clear from the voters. So I just wanted to explain that this is all part of one process right here, and we're going to endeavor to continue to support our kids and staff in the community. Thank you.
Yes.
Again, Stephanie Ahern from Starksboro. I think what Denny was saying was wondering about the money that was going to go towards the building, and then all of the cuts of the staff. I think that's what he was saying. But question I had was, with the 504 plans, right? There's part-time staff members are going to be cut down so that it's like district-wide. Does that mean there'll be one person for K through 12 in the entire district? What would that look like? Because I know what it's looking like for the...
I'll ask technical to respond.
Yeah, I can answer. I have to be recognized though before I can answer your question. The answer is yes. We found that we do not have an effective communication system from 6th grade to 7th grade. We want to ensure that we support students, whether they're on educational support team plans or 504 plans, that have a K-12 support system, and that's what that position is taking place. We really don't think there's any net loss here at Mount Airy.
So this would be, sorry.
I think what you may be asking how many paras are going to do 504. What he's talking about is just administration. It's going to be one administrator handling 504s. We're not talking about the number of paras that are doing 504. That's all coordinated now from the superintendent's office, not the mandate budget. Okay. Any more questions? Would anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. And for those teachers who taught my daughter when she was here in 98, I just want to let you know she's doing really well. She's a special educator with a master's degree in Massachusetts.